Todd, kick off the show. Let's get it started.
All right, all right, all right.
All
Well,
right.
thank you, everybody. Pardon the delay. We were having some technical issues, as some of you may have heard, but we got it together now. You know how we do. Sometimes we tardy for the party, but we want to thank you for joining us anyway. This is part 2 of We Can Breathe Financial Literacy Conversation. Again, joining us this evening is the financial investor, Joy Jackson. Of course, we have attorney and entrepreneur business coach, Pam Hamilton. We have entrepreneur and licensed therapist, Jessica Abina Marshall. And nonetheless, we have bank manager who's been in finances for quite a while, Cassandra Gordon. And your host this evening is myself, Tad Cromwell, Jane Duru, and Chichi Duru. Chichi, is the proper name to say, proper way to say your name, Chichi?
Yeah.
Am I saying it right? All right. And later on, we'll be joined by our brother Mbwebwe and Shangi, who's taking care of some business and is currently in transit, but he will try to join us. All right. Hopefully you caught last month's session, which was phenomenal. And again, this month, we're going to start off with similar questions we had from last week. Pam had made an interesting point as we spoke about communities that we once had, particularly Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Black Wall Street. And she went into how we had rebuilt it. And I think that's part of the conversations that's seldom left out. So, you know, we talked about the Black businesses we had in the community and what happened to them. So to each member on the panel, as we discussed our Black communities, having black banking institutions, transportation systems, hotels, and things like that. Do you think systemic racism had a part to do with the destruction of these places and led to their failure or non-existence of today? Or do you think it was something else that why we lost those communities? And Pam, I would like for you to speak to that first.
Please, can I say something before we dig right into it? Please, if you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand. If you don't feel comfortable asking the question, you can put it on the chat and we will ask the question for you. Thank you. Go on, Pam.
Okay, so me first. So I think there were a couple of things that played into it. So yes, systemic racism did play a part in it, but I think it wasn't the whole story.
Okay.
So a lot of times, they talk about PTSD. So if you look at our history, the vast majority of us were kidnapped and enslaved in this country. And the ones of us that, of our ancestors. And as we came into this country, part of enslaving people is breaking down tearing apart their history, tearing apart their language, tearing apart their belief in themselves. And so we went through all of that. And so there was a lot of lack of belief in ourselves. And so even though when we finally got freed and we were fighting, there were a lot of people, when we worked together, we all worked together really well. But part of the ability to build those businesses was that Black people couldn't go to the white people's businesses. They were insulated. And when they integrated and Black people could go to the white businesses also built businesses within those communities in order to take advantage of all the shopping, because a lot of the Black businesses continued to thrive even though the white people were going through depression. And so they built businesses there. And a lot of times, Black people chose to go to those businesses rather than the Black businesses because they felt like they were getting something better. And when you look at the history of the whole desegregation, they had this whole study where they were taking Black dolls and white dolls, and even the black kids preferred the white doll, and they looked at the black kid as bad. And we still have that in our language. We describe bad things as dark. We say it when we're talking about negative, we say it was a dark, dark day in history, right? Because we look at dark as bad. And so that all feeds into um, that destruction. And so it's not just systemic history, I mean, systemic racism in terms of what's happening in history, it's built into our language. And so some of it is about us supporting each other and trusting each other. And I think, you know, when we look at things from our perspective nowadays and we see like, we look at Jackie Robinson and we look at, you know, all of these people and we say, well, they weren't doing nothing special, but they were doing something huge at the time that they were doing it, because they were showing that yes, black people can compete with white people, and we nor they believed it at the time. And so I think that was a lot of what goes into it. And we started coming back from that in the 60s and 70s with the whole Black Power movement, um, and with the Black Panthers and all of those things. But then um, we had to have that destroyed. So Malcolm was killed, Martin Luther King was killed, you know, and then the crack the it was heroin at that time. The heroin um, came in and really destroyed everything, you know. And I think, you know, those were put into our communities on purpose. That wasn't an accident, and it only became a problem when it started going around the world, you know, around all the rest of the nation. So,
Right.
you know, it's not just systemic racism. I think part of it is something we have to work on ourselves too.
Right. Oh, okay. So pretty much the psychosis. And I love that you brought up the doll test. For those who may want to look up the doll test, it was done by Dr. Kenneth and his wife, Mamie Clark. The doll test, I believe it was in the 1940s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can check that out. Yeah, his name was Dr. Kenneth
It
Clark.
was at, yeah, Northside Center for Child Development. I used to work there
Right.
after I graduated Columbia.
And ready to come to you, Jessica, because being that Pam brought that up, and I think that's an excellent point, because outside of systemic racism, we have to deal with the mindset of our folks to, once we integrated, we took our money outside the community, because as you mentioned, Dr. King was murdered as well, you know, the murder of Malcolm and Dr. King. But Dr. King was murdered only after he started talking about financial empowerment and what was owed to us.
Yes.
Could you speak about the mental health of the community at the time, you know, with our business, in respect to the same question I asked Pam, you know?
Sure, Pam actually covered a lot of great points. And racism, to be quite honest, racism has been one of the leading causes of our mental health instability in this country. And we need to really face that. And on, not just for Black people, but for white people, it is a mental health issue, not as an excuse, but as a problem. And racism can be linked to our nutritional decline as well, why we reportedly have so many health ailments, why our lifespans are cut short. And it's not racism equals bad health. It's all the things that surround racism, all the inaccessibility, the constant attacks on our stability physically, mentally. It is I hear a little feedback. I'm sorry. It comes as a wave with all these other things that can become like an onslaught of it becomes like a battle once we step foot in this country, no matter where we're from. And this is research backed up by Professor Cogburn in Columbia School of Social Work, does great research on how racism has affected us, not only mentally, but physically. One generation into this country, whether you're from Africa, whether you're from Brazil, if you're as a person of color, that next generation has almost the same exact ailments, and all sicknesses, same kind of statistics that people who've been here in this country, African Americans that have been here for generations, such as my family, it almost becomes equal. And she links a lot of that to racism. So I think, to make sure I don't lose the focus of the question, how that has affected us health, in addition to health wise, but also mental wise, is that it does give us these like seemingly insurmountable mountains that we have to climb just to do things that equal to white people. We seemingly have to work harder. And that's like the messaging that's been drilled down through generations. You got to work twice as hard or 10 times as hard as a white person just to get, whatever. We had pay discrepancies. We weren't, to this day, you can still find a white male makes more money than any other. And then if you're a Black woman, you have racism affect your family household. So you might be the head of household, but you're making less. So you have less disposable income, you have less resources for the most part, unless you work extremely hard and you just, because there are a lot of educated people, despite that were able to make some type of wealth and things for themselves. But racism was always that nail in the road that just would flatten the tire. It would be right there for you to have to figure out how to navigate around. Access to loans for your business, access to spaces for your business, connections and networks, because they had other people. Let's just, I don't like to always just say white people, but let's be real. Those who maintain the wealth in this country had networks and connections, and they were able to get access to things. It's like an old boys club, they would drink martinis and play golf, and they would do business deals in the golf, but we weren't even allowed in there unless we were serving food or cleaning up. So, that's how racism has trickled and evolved into all these other ways. And then when I talk more on the mental piece, when you see these things perpetuated, generation after generation after generation, it starts to form your identity, who you are. You start having these limited beliefs that that are created in your childhood that you carry all the way to adulthood. So you don't, like I mentioned, I think the last one, you don't even really truly aspire for much because you don't even think you're worth it. You don't even think that that's for you. So where someone can see in their mind, yeah, I can see myself as a millionaire, because everything around them supports it, because they've had generations of this messaging about what they can achieve. You, on the other hand, will have Black families and communities or communities of color who don't see that as an option. Although it is an option, it's not programmed to us to be an option. So we may not even aspire for the schools, the Ivy League schools, one example. We may not aspire for to create our own business. We may just aspire to work. There's some families that say, as soon as my child can work, they work, and they're going to have to pay me rent. Like, there's this whole mindset about wealth and about creating stability for our families that varies, and we don't see what's necessary to create sustained wealth as much in our communities, because it's not something that is programmed into us. So that's where the mental deprogramming and understanding our worth, and that's when I reference Joy DeGruy pervasive self-esteem argument, or pervasive low self-esteem argument, is that we consistently have this low self-esteem is not just surface, it's deeply embedded into our subconscious. And so we can put on nice clothes, we can try to feel, and look like we feel great about ourselves, but deep down inside about how our worth, we still have challenges there. So that affects us, and affects what we tolerate, what we strive for, and basically how our families look and how our communities ultimately look.
I love that you hit on the mindset, because as we learn in this new millennium about wealth building, the one thing we hear a lot of financial gurus and millionaires say, it's all about your mindset. So I love that you brought it up, because if people don't believe that they're worthy of certain things, they can't see themselves in positions of success. And I love that you referred Dr. Joy DeGruy, because I love her book, and I would recommend it to all young people between the ages of 14 and up. Her book is called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, and it's synonymous with post-traumatic stress syndrome. However, for people of African ancestry, our circumstances here have definitely been different. So I'm glad you brought up those points, Jessica. I want to ask the same question of Joy. Do you think it was systemic racism for the decline of our Black businesses, or non-existence of Black businesses in a lot of our communities? Or do you think it was something else in addition? Joy? Did we lose Joy?
No, she's muted. She's
Mute
the
or
unmute
mute,
button.
Ms. Jackson.
Yeah. Could you unmute your? Yeah. Well, Cassandra, could you go to that question? Could you answer that question while Joy straightens out her microphone?
Could you?
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, Joy.
Yes,
I can.
Oh,
Okay.
great. Sorry about that. Didn't realize
That's
I was. Let me turn the volume up to make sure. All righty. So,
Yeah.
as I was saying, systemic racism, I feel, is more of a modern term. When this initially started happening, it was just plain out intentional, basically to wipe out, African Americans or Black people or former slaves if possible. They could no longer control us and have access to us, then we really should not be around and existing. What really started the so-called systemic racism was we weren't expected to flourish and grow and do well after slavery. But when we set up our individual communities, and we were, segregated, we taught ourselves, we became doctors or nurses before we could even get those degrees. We treated ourselves, we taught ourselves, we created businesses because those were the only businesses we could go to, and we began to flourish. And then because of the quality of what we did and at the level we did it and the success, whites started to frequent our businesses and buy from us. And then our small little, towns or one street communities became multiple blocks. And then a couple of miles or, with them scattered if you were lucky. And then that's when it was time to tear it apart and destroy it. So it was an outright, they were outright determined to wipe us off the face of the earth, or to divide and conquer by, separating the men and going after the men and the boys and killing and lynching them, so that the women were now alone and vulnerable and scared and would scatter or leave, and then the community would fall apart. So in turn, when, after desegregation and everyone started, to say, hey, what if we couldn't have access to it, that must mean it's better. And as you said, taking the money outside of our towns and our communities and buying, outside from people who really didn't want us to even mingle with them, but they wanted our money. So that in turn, I see desegregation is really bringing about the total downfall of our businesses and communities flourishing. That started the process where we were no longer teaching and educating our own and providing them with the truth and the full information about our histories. Someone else is now teaching our children and telling them their version of our history. We were no longer doctors for ourselves. We were using white doctors. And of course, they weren't looking out for our well-being. The Tuskegee experiment is one of the best well-known experiments in which we became, the guinea pigs or the individuals to practice these new techniques on or see how a disease ravaged us. And to this day, a lot of modern medicine is based on what they did to us, human beings, without giving us any type of painkillers and operating on us, cutting us open, intentionally not treating us to see how diseases progressed or how one type of a treatment or so-called cure would affect before they then applied it to whites as a whole. So, you talk about a lot of this traumatic stress syndrome or this trauma. A lot of it, in the mistrust of doctors, a lot of it comes to that. Why should, and we're dying from diseases at higher levels and rates than non people of color or whites are, because of the fact that we still don't trust them. And I have to tell you, because of the disparity in treatment, it hasn't stopped. It's just not, as blatant and obvious. It's done in different ways. Why do you think we have a higher level of infant mortality, of women dying in pregnancy, or because of, lack of treatment or low quality treatment after being pregnant? We should not have these high numbers, but it's because of the inequality in treatment. So I know it's called, we're saying it's systematic, but I just see it as just plain outright and intentional, and that's the Martin term being used. I see it as more devious than that, and it's intentional. It's intentional, and unfortunately, we do have to go and teach ourselves, have that confidence, which I'm seeing a lot more of, talk about the wealth and passing it on. But I think the main part of that is the history. You have what we've done being taken from us and claimed by others, from the various inventions, from sports, through medicine, and others are claiming it. And then now, and I do in part to Black Lives Matter, you're starting to see recognition being given to many of the Blacks who have created different things, or who actually were the inventors or the authors of different things. And you see it coming out, you see different things being said on TV and in the media. And I can't tell you how many times I've had my nephews texting me or calling me and saying, my dad is known for, he would be in the neighborhood talking to kids about just history, pride, and knowing what you say. He goes, why are the things that, granddaddy's saying now, why are they finally saying them? We knew this all along. And I said, that's exactly it. We aren't the ones who control information. That's why.
So,
Well, thank you. Go ahead, Jane.
Yeah. So I've read several places about how Blacks were disenfranchised from building wealth in terms of land, because after slavery, lands was given to the white people, and the Blacks were not given land. They were not considered worthy to be given land to grow their business. And this is part of the way wealth grew with the white folks, and the Black folks were kept down. Then there was also the issue of redlining, keeping them, not letting them own properties in certain way, not letting them have loans, not giving them loans, and also devaluation of their property, not giving them the right value of their property in assessments. All this, going from, with all the other things that you have said, must have contributed to why Black folks have been, kept down in terms of building their wealth. For folks listening, what we're trying to do here is to go a little bit into history before we can come to the present on how we can overcome some of the things that has been done.
Yeah.
Am I right?
To that?
Yes.
To the land thing, we actually did have land. That's how we got our towns, and we purchased it. But we were not expected to flourish and succeed. So if we had enough and put our pennies together and we bought this land, the redlining followed much later. What they did to instill that was they decided that if, other than just burning down our cities and towns and outright destroying them, that they would target our districts for the highways, for the infrastructure improvement, and just outright put the highways through and in our towns, and then they would take it through eminent domain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Once they did that, and then these people were supposed to be relocated or given land to replace this, or allowed opportunities to repurchase something else. Once they got us off the land, they were like, we can tell them we're going to do that, but it never happened. So, a lot of these highways were intentionally planned to run through Black towns and Black communities, to one, divide them from permanent division from white communities, and two, to destroy their means of wealth and accumulate wealth that they could pass on to other generations.
And Jane, that was an excellent question, because I'm sorry, Chichi, because that's where I had wanted to go, that you brought that up, Jane, because Joy brought up a lot of great points, even when she talked about the Tuskegee experiment, because hopefully the audience do have out their pens, and then notebooks so that they can take notes, because the history is very important, because a lot of people are trying to acquire what we've already possessed. Because even at the turn of the century in the 1900s, I believe we had about 14 to 15 million acres were owned by Black people.
Oh,
But
wow.
right now, we have a little over half of that, maybe about 7 million acres are owned by Black people, and we're losing. Because to the question, Jane, about us owning land, after the Civil War, when the Union defeated the Confederate soldiers, many of the Confederate armies abandoned their land and left their enslaved captives behind. So as enslaved people, we still worked and tilled the land. And all the Confederates, and we asked the Union, what do we do with this land? The Union said, you've been working it this long, keep it. So we had the land.
Oh,
But then the Confederates came back, and the Union just told the Confederate Army, all you have to do is apologize and we'll give you your land back, even though we've been working the land for free.
Yeah.
And then we were able to own the land after the Emancipation Proclamation, because the Union won and abolished slavery in 1865. At least, you know, that's what we're told, right? But then not only were the Confederate armies given their land back, but they were also compensated for the loss of their property, us as slaves.
wow.
So they told the enslaved people that, yeah, you could come back, we could share a crop, you could live here, but you got to pay me rent. And many of our ancestors chose not to. Many of them chose not to, and that's how we lost a lot of land that we did have. And to Joy's point, we did control and own a lot of parcels of land around the country. And this is part of the story that's often left out, you know? So we want folks to really take notes, write down a lot of references that we make, because just as Sister Joy talked about the Tuskegee experiment, we were speaking about that before we got on camera, about a book called Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington that spoke on that. And also in the medical field, there's a sister named Henrietta Lacks,
Yep.
whose cells have been used in almost all vaccinations around the world. And you can read that about her in a book by Rebecca Sklootz called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. And in fact, Oprah Winfrey did a movie about her, I believe it was. You know, but this is a lot of information that our young people need to know. And particularly, you know, our African brothers and sisters that are here from the continent that may not know this information that has happened to the Africans that were brought over here during the transatlantic slave trade, you know. So I just wanted to put that out there real quick, because I want people to really take notes and do their research, so they don't think our panelists are just talking about what they feel or what they think, but this is actual documented facts that each panelist is saying, you know. So I'm just gonna give you the resources on where to find this information. But oh, Chichi, you wanted to say something? Because I wanted to ask the same question.
Okay, sorry. I think Esther has a question relating to what you're saying. So I just wanted to give the mic to her.
Who's that?
Esther. She's gonna.
Okay.
Hello, Esther.
Esther, you there?
Hi,
Hi.
how are you?
Okay.
Thank you for taking my call. Thank you, Chichi, for seeing that.
No.
I have a question. I think you guys have moved a little far away from it, but I'll still go back to it. That was about systemic racism in Black businesses. I live in Indiana. I'm calling from Indianapolis, Indiana. And I've been in Indiana for a little over 25 years here. So when I first came to Indiana, of course, you know, if you guys know what Indiana is as pure bright red as it can be. You know, so, but that's where I lived, and that's what I've known most of my life in the US, is the state of Indiana. But I'm going to hit point directly when it comes to businesses. So especially, let me use example, the hair business. The hair business seems to be a very thriving business, and the customers for that business, over 90% of them are Blacks, African Americans, just like me. I patronize them more than anything else. And I keep looking at them. Why is it that these businesses are only run by Asians, not
Yep.
even Asian Americans?
Yep.
They control,
The
I
business.
wouldn't say 95, but 100% of the hair industry, in at least in the state where I live in. And it bothers me a lot that we patronize them that much. And these people are one of the rudest population that I've ever met in the US. They are very rude. And I mean, I have a couple of them as neighbors, and I deal in a civil matter because we work the same place. But so after working here instead of Indiana, I started to seek for business options in my area. So I met one of my friends that we used to work together. She's very enterprising and she talks about businesses too. So both of us sought out for minority small business administration to see if they can help us out. And I was more interested in healthcare, and she was more interested in the hair industry because we talked about it a lot. And I'm like, this is an opening. Why can't you get in? Why can't somebody get in? But anyway, both of us went through the same training and everything. And at some point, she dropped off. I went in there. I was referred to the small business administration through a friend from church that said that she would be able to help me or help us get started. So when I didn't see her, I continued with what I was doing, my own part. And eventually, I tapered off from my job. I was able to face what I needed to do. So I called her up at some point and she will give me excuses of the reason why she didn't follow up. So the lady at church, when I asked her, she said, oh, your friend never followed up. She said she called her several times and she didn't respond. And again, initially, when they went through the initial thing, that she didn't have the credit to be able to jump started on where she needed her to get started on. So my question, is this: do you think in this case that systemic racism played a part in this? Because sometimes people view things a little differently. Oh, I wasn't giving this up. I was struggling as much as she was struggling, but I did not have any support as much as she said that she didn't have any either. But the only thing I did was I pulled my 401k, and supported myself because I knew that this is a risk to take. It can come out okay and it can also go sour. In this case, I was wondering, was it afraid of risking, or was there any part of systemic racism in this scenario that it took that might have played part in her not succeeding in this industry that I thought that she had a shot at?
Well, thank you for your call, Esther. Cassandra, could you speak to that? Because that's along the lines of the questions I was going to ask you as well. But I guess Miss Esther gave her personal testimony to give it context.
So depending on each state has its own, small business administration for which there should be tools and resources available if you want to start a business, how you fund a business, etc. And some of those resources includes, how to develop a business plan. And there also should be resources on there if you don't have credit or if you don't have a lot of funding that you can kind of put up to support, because there are what they term, and I'm using my air quotes, like micro lenders, which is almost like community building or crowdfunding. You can potentially have access to those types of resources through the Small Business Administration. But it seems to me that because perhaps that she's in Indiana, that maybe those resources are pretty limited. Because I was just kind of like putzing around through our SBA here in New Jersey, and there are resources available. And maybe the person just didn't know that industry that she wanted to go into to be able to provide her. I don't know. To say, and we keep saying, to Joy's point, systemic racism. Words matter, to Pam's point, and we use these flowery terms instead of just calling it what it is. And could it be because it's an industry for which Black folks want to get involved with, and they don't know how to help you to do that? That could very well be. But I in all honesty, there are resources out there, and maybe it's not her SBA. I was doing some. there's also like community development financial institutions that you could potentially find out through the SBA. Maybe do a little bit of homework on your own so you could figure out how to create your business plan. No, you may not have, like I said, have the credit, because you have to look for other non-traditional means of funding. That's really what it boils down to, because your traditional means of funding are your banks, where they're going to expect you to have some collateral. They're going to expect you to have a credit score of 700 plus. You just got to look for non-traditional means. And that's where I talk about like crowdfunding and lenders. You talk community banking or credit, credit unions and that sort of thing, just non-traditional sources. And depending on specifically what it is you want to develop, there could be a community of resources available to you. It's to say systemic racism, it could very well be just, not having an awareness of a specific industry. And that's really what happens oftentimes too. Like, you come up with an idea, they've never heard of it, so they can't really tell you how to go about it, especially if you're in a place like Indiana. It's probably highly unlikely that they know how to tell you as a small business, how to create that. Because if it's an Asian market, they work and they pull their resources together all day, every day to create, to develop, their stores, their restaurants, their, beauty supply chain and everything else. So I would just say probably there's just a lack of knowledge in that specific industry that I would just try to, like I said before, non-traditional means of funding.
Thank you so
I'm going
much.
to add a comment to the Korean dominance of the beauty supply store, just to touch on that. So there is, and how it plays into the systematic lockout, I'll say, of specific people, especially because when it comes down to our beauty supply stores. So the history with Korea and the Black hair care goes back into actual legislation, laws that were written into how they were importing hair. When we're talking about beauty supply stores that sell weaves, wigs, and hair, they started to dominate it way back then. So you're talking about getting monopolies over distribution, having, I don't know specific legislative but there's a documentary called The Korean Takeover of the Black hair care industry. And I believe the name Sam, I can't remember. If I can find it, I'll link it. But how that has affected us as Black people trying to get into beauty supply store business ownership and different things like that. It really has boiled down to their dominance. And then there's race in that, because we are the ones that purchase those products. They're for us and our hair. However, they have the overwhelming dominance over that. And they strategically have had that happen generationally so that they've maintained, they can go and open up a community. They got things so solid that they're able to dominate that, and they will get money. And then it comes down to the thinking. So there's that documentary includes actually interacting with Black people in these towns like Chicago and Detroit, and how the Korean beauty supply store will price their item $3 cheaper or $1 cheaper. And certain Black people would say, well, I'm going to go to that Korean store because it's cheaper, as opposed to that Black supply chain that has to charge higher because we don't have a dominance, we don't have an inside, we don't have as many connections. And they completely demolished some industries. There's a curling iron, the Korean will come out with one $5 cheaper and then completely take over. So there's a lot of things that have been happening, and creating these things that make it harder and harder for us. I'm not just, I'll be a little bit off tangent, but I did want to say there is some reason for that. It's pretty significant. If I can find that, I was looking for it while you were talking. It gives some insight into just how big of a beast it is to try to really break in any real way into industry that we support mostly.
And I agree with that, Jessica, but I think there's a community wealth building gap that we have.
Yes.
Right? So we think about the Asian market, and I looked this up too. The Asian dollar circulates 28 days in their community. The Jewish, 19 days in their community. White, 17 days in their community. With us, not even a day.
Right.
And so that's something we have to figure out. How do we keep those dollars within our community?
Right.
You know, one of the conversations I've had with Tab before, you know, like he's done his boot camps and he'll say, oh, I'll give you the family discount. And I told him, I don't want the family discount. Your time is your time. What I don't do is negotiate with someone who looks like me, who it's their small business. I'm not going to say, well, let me save $1 so that, you know, so that I have that extra dollar, but then, you know, it's leaving the community. And that's what we have to get back to your point, Jessica, right? Like, how do we keep that money in our community such that you're still getting value for your dollar?
Mhm.
You know, you're still getting a service for your dollar,
Right.
you know, and but you get what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah, I just can I bring up just I want to put something on what Cassandra just said. Um, I was trying to get a program up here where I live in upstate New York, and working with a number of other Black people that um, are progressive minded, and we were trying to set up a funding and training for Black people that wanted to have their own business. But one of our key criteria was that they had to put their business in the Black community. And we were going to give priority to people that lived in that community. And a lot of them objected. They didn't want to be part of it if you had to be in the community. And that was a problem for me because what I see is we let all of these other people come and build their business in our community. They hire their own relatives, they do the work, they hire their relatives and friends of their relatives. That all of the money goes to those people, and then they take all of that money out of our community. And we take all of our money to them and give it to them. And none of it goes in our community, and none of our kids get hired. And so our kids don't get the training, they don't get the skill sets, they don't get anything. And then they have to come out of our community and go in a white neighborhood, which some of them are not capable of doing. And some of them, the white people are scared of them because of how they look. And so they don't get the jobs, they don't get the training, they don't get the care, they don't get the opportunity. And the money doesn't stay in our neighborhood. And that's something that we have to work on changing. When back in the day with Madam C.J. Walker, she owned the hair industry. But part of that legislation you're talking about, because the way she owned it, she hired her own and she made them independent distributors, and she helped them be able to go out and launch their own business of making money. And so it was giving Black women too much independence and too much power, and that had to end. Because to Joy's point, while we're calling it systemic racism, it was just racism. And the reason it became called systemic racism is because after we were freed, there had to be a way to continue to control us. And so they built it into their institutions. And so now we call it institutional and systemic racism because it was actually built into the system.
Yes.
You know, we did own land. And a lot of Black people, when they left from being shareholders, they went out and they bought land, or they went out to go look for land. And the whole history of rednecks were white men with red scarves that went out and chased those people back and killed them and destroyed whatever they were trying to build. So there's a lot of history that we don't talk about because we let white schools and white systems teach our kids. And they teach, you know, the conqueror gets to tell the history.
Yeah, and I'm also aware there are a lot of inventions that is done by the Black people, and the kids don't know this because if they are not aware of great Black men that build things like the electric bulb, all you hear is Con Edison, but you don't hear that the filament of that bulb, the thing that actually makes the bulb light up, is developed, is invented by the Black man. Nobody knows this. Our kids don't know this. So they don't have the role model that gives them, you know, makes them want to be all that they can be. Like the dishwasher, I understand the dishwasher, the air conditioner and all that, I understand.
The
When
cell phone.
black,
Mhm.
even the first heart surgery, I understand was done by a black man, and he never got credit. So this is some of the things that are done to the black folks. They don't get credit for the things that they did. It's just like only recently did we become aware of that movie, the women behind the going to the
On to the
national
moon.
women was.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah,
Oh,
the movie about the women going to the moon, how they
yeah,
were the
doing the
mathematicians.
mathematical calculations.
Yes.
You know, so this is some of the things that are done. It's like trying to bury our achievement. So now my question is, how do we, okay, we know all these things happen, how do we overcome that mentality that they have entrenched in us?
Well,
Jessica?
let me just say this real quick, because I love that you brought that point up. And I like what Pam ended it with, the conquer always gets to tell the story.
Mm.
What we're doing right here now is so important, because outside of just learning to develop businesses, we have to know the importance of it and put it in this historical context. Because as you said, even with Lewis Latimer creating the filament, many people don't know that Lewis Latimer's house is in Queens and that it's actually a museum that is open. In fact, I took some children to the museum, and one of the young children, Zaymari, he knew more about the invention than the actual curator, who was not Black. But there were machines there that was part of the exhibits that he had no clue of what they were. And Zaymari had to explain it to him. And I believe at the time, Zaymari was probably between the ages of 10 and 12 years old. So I say all that to say that this is how we do it. It's very important that regardless to what we do, we always put a historical context to whatever we're doing, because we are a people of history that see that there's another group that's aggressively trying to bury our accomplishments. Yep. So it's important that we put it in context. Though this conversation is about financing and business, we have to understand why is it important and how we use our businesses and finances as a tool to move ourselves forward as a group. Because our children, Hachichi, it's very important that our children get this information. That's why I love to see Chi-Chi on the call and her friends as well as my daughter Kayla is watching also. But these conversations, we have to keep going regardless to what it is that we're doing. And I'll step off my soapbox with that right there.
Yeah. Okay. So having dealt with the past, let's move on to the present. So my question is to Pamela. You are in business development. So my question is, what are the first steps for someone who is trying to build a business? What are the critical steps they need to avoid, to take to avoid getting into financial and legal crisis?
So I'm gonna say, I need to go back for a second, just for a second. If we look back a little bit, there was a serious leader, Steve Biko, and he said we have to show things by example. We have to let our people see that we do this, and so we need to have business owners in place. And so, yes, so that people can see that having a business is something that can happen. When I did my business, I did a law practice and I started in my house. Um, I didn't have anything. And so a lot of times we get stuck into, we have to have all this money, we have to make it look plush, we have to do this, we have to do that. We want to start up here. But sometimes we got to start way down at the bottom. You know, sometimes we got to start with, okay, I got one client. When I finally opened the office, I had an office because it was time I needed to be able to meet people face to face, and I was up here in Utica where it's extremely racist. Um, and so I needed to look some kind of ways, have some kind of presence. When I started my office, I made the front of it look good, but I used my grandmother's dining room table as my conference table. I put some chairs there. I sat in the back on a crate because I didn't have the money to get an executive chair at that point and still operate. You have to start from where you are. When they look at all these people that started in their mom's garage or in their basement or something, yes, they did get money eventually. But a lot of times we go and we say, okay, we can't get money because we don't have credit and because they don't give Black people money and because this or that. And so if you're trying to start too big, you're not going to be able to do it. If you have lousy credit and you have no money, then you can't buy a franchise. You know what I mean? But you can start online and build a business, and it'll cost you $50 to get started. You know what I mean? So you can start where you can and then build it up. And if you really want to have a Starbucks franchise, then build your online business and then invest that money into something else that grows a business and invest and go up and up and up. And people don't look at it that way. They look at it as I have to have all of the accoutrements, I have to have all of the stuff. And the SBA talks a lot about how they help small businesses. And they do when you're at a certain level, but they put all of their stuff out through SBDC organizations, so it's the Small Business Development Centers in your community. And your community looks at you face to face, and they're almost all white all the time. And when you come in there and you talking about a Black business, they don't really help you. They don't really give you information. They don't really want to work with you. And if they do, it's at a very, very minimum level. Okay. They, and then the banks will give you loans if you have collateral and good credit and you know how to write a business plan. A lot of people don't know how to write a business plan. They don't know how to write a proposal. And they think they can go in the bank and tell them their story. And the bank don't want to hear your story. They want you to have a business plan that tells them how they're going to get their money back. When you talk to investors, they want to see a business plan so they know how they're going to get a return on the money they're putting into you. And we skip those stages all the time. We want to go into the glamour of having a business. And so, what I'm saying to you, what I would say, because yes, you need to have a business structure. Yes, you need to have all these things, but you need to start by getting your mindset right about you running a business. And then you need to put all of those things into it. You have to know that you're going to have to hire an attorney to help you do some things. You're going to have to hire a bookkeeper or an accountant to help you do some things. And that's going to cost you money. And no, they're not going to work for free because that's not how it works. Even if they Black, even if they're your sister and they want to help you, nobody's working for free because they got to pay their bills too.
Exactly.
And so some of the things that we look at is how do we work this structure? Now, there's some parts of this you can do yourself, right? If you know what you're doing, there's some parts you can do yourself. But then you're going to have to do the research and the paperwork and work through the process. And then, as far as again, seeing that working, when I was building my business, I had a desk in my house. That was back when I lived in Brooklyn. And my son had a desk in my office. And I worked on my business and he did his homework, right, from first grade and second grade. But he saw me working.
Yep.
And he learned how to negotiate. And then we started investing in property. And he went with my spouse and they went together and they fixed the locks on the doors and they talked to the tenants. And he was right there every single time. So he knew how to do it. So later on, he could help rent the apartments. And those are things he learned how to do because we took him with us. We did it with him. So build a business, but let your kids go with you.
Exactly.
Build a family business and let your kids work in it. Those are things you can do. And then to not get in trouble, just do everything above board. We always trying to be sneaky and on the down low. And that's when you get in trouble. You can't hire people off the books. You can make them subcontractors. You can make them independent contractors.
Right.
But if you're going to do that, have a contract, make sure they agree with that. It's again within the law, because you can't open a restaurant and make your waiters be independent contractors. It doesn't work that way. So talk with somebody, talk to somebody to get basic advice, right? Getting a business plan together is fairly simple because you're really trying to tell people about your business. And I see someone saying, how can you prepare a business plan? How can you learn?
Yeah.
I know people, and this is why I say the centers are not going to really help you. People that don't want to pay to do anything, I always say these people will do it for free. But I've stopped saying that because I've sent 5 or 6 different people to them, and they say, okay, now write a business plan. We need you to do this, but they're not really helping them. They're not really coaching them, and they end up coming back and paying me to do it. So I'm in the process of actually trying to set up a course, and I'll give Ted that information when it's ready, so people can do a business plan. There's just things that you have to have in place. I know people that go to Zoom because they say, well, it's cheaper than hire a lawyer. And Zoom will set up your business structure for you. But Zoom does exactly what you tell them to do.
Exactly.
They operate in every state because they say they're not lawyers. They're just, you fill out a form and they do what you told them to. So if you tell them the wrong thing, you got the wrong business structure.
Wow.
Because they're not giving you no advice.
Wow. So what are some tips to avoid like the wrong business structure? Like what is the wrong business structure?
So
like how?
The wrong business structure is not an easy question because the wrong business structure depends on what kind of business you're trying to form
Mm-hmm.
and what your particular circumstances are and what you're going to do with the business and who's all involved with you. So there's a series of questions that lead to the right business structure. So like if everybody's US citizens and they're all going to work in the business and you all need flexibility because you're not going to follow doing the right procedures for a corporation, then maybe what you need is an LLC, right? But if you want to make it an S corp so that you don't have to pay huge amounts of self-employment tax because you're making money, then people that are not from this country and not naturalized citizens can't be part of an S corp. So you really have to look at all of these different things. But when you go to a bank, you got to have a business structure. If you're talking to people that are going to invest in your business, you got to have a business structure because they can't get their money back from Joe down the block. They can't go get their money from Jane.
Right.
Right? They need a business structure so that they know how they're getting their money back, so that their shares are built in to secure their investment. So there's all these things that come up and people want a simple answer. There's not a simple answer and you're not going to know. So when you go to Zoom and you tell them do blah, 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 they can know you're wrong and they're going to do it.
Do it. Yeah.
Right. I knew someone that they set up 3 corporations and one corporation was owned by one and one corporation was owned by the other. And the third one was owned by both of them. And they thought they were going to spread the taxes all around. But it was one that they were all 50% owner or 100% owner. So if you're 50% owner of all of them or 100% owner of all of them, that's one tax. That's one tax bill. You got to count all of that and it's all getting taxed. You're not spreading that around. Right? But they didn't know that. And the guy that owns Zoom is an attorney. He knows it, but he can't tell them that because then he would be practicing law. So you, and then he would be in trouble because it's in all 50 states.
Mm.
So you just have to be, you have to be willing to do the right thing. But you can start where you are. You can start. We had my son save his money. Every dollar he got was in parts, and some of it was for him building a business. You can start where you are. If you get $50, you can start a business, and then you can build up and go from there.
I guess the important thing is to have an idea of what business it is you want to do. If you have a dream, and I guess having a dream, having an idea is the first step in business. If you're skilled at something, you could be, right? You could be doing that skill. Does somebody with a skill, do they need to start forming a corporation before?
So here's the thing. So having a skill is not the same as owning a business.
No, what I mean, like you have, let's say like real estate, somebody who is a builder, who knows how to, a handyman, like they can decide to build a business based on that handiwork and get other people that they train and go to work than being a one-man band, a one-man show.
Right. So they can set up a construction business, but then they have to make sure they do the research first and get a license. They got to make sure that they get the right insurance.
Right.
And then when they start, if they're not going to hire people as employees, they got to have contracts to do independent contractor work with them. They have to run it like a business. They have to think from the mindset of I'm the CEO and not, oh, I'm just a contractor. I'm not Joe Blow, the contractor. Because building a business is more than just doing your skill.
Yeah.
Right. And so at some point, yeah, they do need a business structure, but they need to start by making sure they have the right licenses and insurances in place, be able to even do what they're going to be doing. And if they're in New York City, they got to get a home improvement license, and they got to get a home improvement salesperson's license. They got to get insurance to cover them for their mistakes. They got to get workers' comp if they're going to hire people. So, and they got to have unemployment insurance, right? If they're going to hire people. It's just, you got to know what you're doing and have the right steps in place. So I would say the first step, if you're going to have a business, is to make sure, either do the research and figure out what you need, or talk to people to figure out what you need, and not someone that's never operated a business, not someone that's has no idea. They saw something on the internet. Talk to some qualified people about your business and what you want to do, so you can get legitimate information.
I have two questions. One is for you and Cassandra. When it comes to like the business structure, like what are things that can, like, for the bankers to say no? What turns away like bankers? Like, I understand like it depends on like the type of business, but like how do you present yourself? What ways do you present yourself so they could agree, so they could give you the money? Like how do you, so like what are some tips on that?
How do you sell yourself?
How do you sell
How
yourself?
do you sell yourself? So, you know, one of the things Pam touched on, a business plan. As she said, the banks want to know you are able to pay them back because you have a plan. You understand your business, you understand your industry. And by the way, you must be a legitimate business. So if it's something like you say you want to do an online store, they may want to see your, you know, your materials or something to that effect. They also want to see your financial projections, because if you know your business, then you know how much, let's say you're selling scarves, you'll know how much a unit costs. You'll also know how much, you know, you'll be making per unit. And then at what point do you envision that you're going to break even with your business? And some business, you know, some banks might require, you know, a few years out from a financial projections perspective. And then if you are a small business, again, it becomes your personal guarantee because they want to make sure that you're also invested in your business. They want to see that you have, this is inappropriate, but I hate to say it, but like you're also invested in your business.
Mhm.
So if you are investing, let's say 50,000, but you're asking the bank for 25,000, that's a different conversation than you have 1,000 and you want the bank to come up with 75. So they want to see that, I think Esther said that she took from her 401k. Well, guess what? A bank sees, well, you are investing in your vision, and then you have these other, things that go along with it. Her 401k is part of the money. If you have a house, they may want to see you put that up for collateral as well, especially if you have equity in your home. So all of those things would put you in a better position, but again, you got to have a plan. And, is it easy to create a business plan? Not necessarily, but the internet, I always say Google's your friend. The internet is chock full of information where you can at least have some idea from an industry perspective of where it is you want to play, or do business.
Mhm.
You'll be able to figure out like some of that high level information. And, if you know someone who's in an industry where you want to be, I would also, why not have a mentor? There's no rule that says only one person can benefit from this industry.
Mhm.
Get a mentor that can help you through that as well, because why should you stub your toe on something that you know is hard if somebody's already done it?
Mhm.
Right? So, you can learn from someone else's mistakes. So, depending on what the business is, I'd say just do the homework and show that you are doing the homework and that you are invested in what it is that you want to do.
Okay. So
Mhm.
the first step is do the homework. Second step is create a business plan.
Yep.
The third step is looking for a mentor, would you say? Or should that
Well,
be second?
if I would look for the mentor first,
First, okay.
especially if it's something that you want to do or you're thinking about doing. We can have all the dreams in the world,
Mhm.
but if we don't know really how it should be rolled out and structured, you're going to still kind of be stuck dreaming. So
Yeah.
it's better that you do have a mentor so you can see how it evolves from, idea
Mhm.
to fruition.
Yeah.
And
So
another
just
thing I have to ask is the mentor thing. Like, how does one, like, you just go up to somebody and say, hey, can you be my mentor? Like, how does
so
that, like,
Well,
that
let
was
me ask you
exactly the
this. Are
question
you
I
are
wanted.
you on LinkedIn?
yeah, LinkedIn,
Okay,
LinkedIn is
so
a good
most
way.
times when you're on LinkedIn, you're following someone that, oh my gosh, I really like what they're doing and that sort of thing. You would be surprised at how many people are open to bringing someone else along. So you can send them a private message. If you're following someone, send them a private message on LinkedIn, or if you see them on Facebook and you follow them. We're in a world of social media, whether it's, for personal benefit or professional benefit. And those are some of the resources, even Instagram. You can send, a direct message and you can just ask them, I was thinking about this, and you would be surprised at how many people are willing to help you.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised.
And if you in an industry where you don't have someone where you can follow on LinkedIn, or where you don't, if you try to get a job in that industry, it would help.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have to volunteer places. I know a lot of times we don't, we can't figure out how we can volunteer. But if you say, I will volunteer as your intern so I can learn something, sometimes people will work with you that way. So just there's a lot of different ways to go about doing it. Has an excellent point about being on social media.
Go.
You can
Do
also
me a
do it
favor, can
other
you go up
ways,
to 537 and do a room check?
you know.
Sorry,
See if
I'm gonna
who's
mute
in
them
there?
right
Because
now.
I'm trying to call, they're not answering, but I'm being told the room is occupied.
Okay, muted.
Sorry.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and I wanted to add to that as well, group mentorship. If there's someone, there are a lot of groups on social media as well, and it could be someone you follow or someone you admire, and it's just other platforms that you can get support around whatever it is you're interested in. That may not just be from one person directly. In addition to that, you can find groups that are supportive. There's some business groups and businesses that offer free platforms on social media. You can look into that as well.
Okay. Another question I have is, oh, I think I forgot it. No, it's a good question. Oh, dang. Keep talking. I'm gonna try to remember it. I'm under pressure right now, but like I'll get it.
All right, so I'll go to one of the questions that I have, and I'll pose this to Sister Jessica, and Sister Joy could jump in behind us. What are some of the psychological issues that can hinder a person from pursuing an enterprise, and how can they overcome it? You know, we talked about mindset earlier.
Yes.
So could you speak to that specifically?
And I think a lot of us have mentioned a lot of the major barriers already in this conversation. But yes, mindset is the biggest one, because that then drives your behaviors and what you will do and what you start to seek out. If you tackle that, and you're like, you know what, I actually aspire to do this, and I think that I can do this, and you start looking for information. You said, but you want me to focus on the psychological barriers.
Right,
So
right. How do they overcome it? How can they overcome it?
So this is the concept that I think about often, and I call it business fortitude or emotional fortitude in business. It's this concept where you have to get yourself at a point where, although you may be swayed and moved and pushed around, you're gonna still be strong and move forward, so that you're in a constant forward movement, even if it's small, even where you don't stop. So you keep your momentum going. And that is driven a lot by our thoughts and our desires about actually achieving that thing. So if you keep your goal at the forefront of what you're trying to do, whether it's, whatever business, whatever passion, whatever project you're doing, always stay focused on the prize. Like, keep your eyes on the prize. And to add to what Pam and Cassandra and Joy were saying earlier, I think Pam was mentioning something, and I came up with, sometimes we defeat ourselves before we even start. So I can't do that. Nobody does that. Nobody's going to help me. No, you gotta mute that. You have to stop that, because that is a part of programming, and we create the audio play and we press play, and it automatically stops us. So all our behaviors and all our actions and all our what we physically do starts from the thought. So if we can mute that, switch that, so automatically, so some psychological ways, this, what I do is, it's a constant battle for me. I'm not perfect at all. I'm speaking actually from experience, is that I stop it, and then I tell myself something positive about it. So if I'm getting into the thought pattern of nobody's going to support me, or I don't have enough money to do it, or I'm not going to, I stop and say, I will have enough money to do it. I will overcome this challenge. It may not be clear to me right now. I believe in my passion. I believe in my business. That you have to do this self-talk to yourself that you may not get from the environment. And some people may get all the time, which is why they're maybe easier to accomplish it. And we have to do that for ourselves. And then
fear of failure.
Huh?
I said fear of failure.
Yes. And I think it's not even first of all, I take failure out of my vocabulary when it comes to business. There's no such thing as failure. There's only something that we did that we might need to do differently, a new direction we might need to take. So I take failure out of the equation, because failure holds so much weight to us. Like, oh, we think of failure and we think that our lives have no purpose and we just messed up and we can't go on. It is such a trigger to all these other emotions. So I take failure out, and then I have to tell myself a lot of times, oh, you'll just find another way to do it. Don't worry about it. You're gonna try another way next time. You may be disappointed right now, but it's okay, because you're gonna do it. You just it's gonna work out. So I have to keep that kind of conversation. And then focusing, a lot of people hold themselves back by focusing on trying to get it perfect. I think, again, Pam had mentioned people, it doesn't need to be perfect. You just need to start. And so there's this successful businesswoman that I made an unofficial mentor. I think you can make these people your mentors, and they don't even know it. And she grew her business up to $10 million in 4 years. Like, within her first 2 years, she was a man, and it's an online thing. Black woman, and she has a quote that done is better than perfect. Don't worry about getting things perfect and having all this, invested in all these tools to make things look all fancy. Just do it. So, and I like some of the advice that other panelists have given. Start where you are, and you can start with one person, because that's gonna build what I talk about is like momentum. I think of a snowball. It catches momentum, it catches speed, and then you'll find it's not as hard to keep moving forward, because now you might have some testimonies. Now you have one person that likes it, and that gives you a good feeling, and you're like, okay, I can do this because one person likes what I'm doing and they bought my thing, whatever. So you kind of have to just keep feeding yourself with inspiration, with motivation, and check yourself, check your brain, because this is what it is. There's people that have been homeless on the street. A lot of very wealthy people were homeless, sleeping in their cars, and all they had was a thought and a drive, and that's what took them from that place to where they are, was here, and everything else kind of lined itself. And then their eyes opened up and they saw opportunities. They realized that that's something that could be. So I think those are the psychological tricks. Whenever you start to feel down and negative, mute it. Now you can hear it, process it, and then stop it. Don't keep that conversation going for yourself. Check yourself. I stop and I say, no, don't even think it. No, that's not true. And then I create the opposite. I make that statement in my head, or I'll say it out loud. And just keep doing it on a regular basis, and you'll start getting your brain rewired to start focusing on the good and what's working as opposed to what's not working.
Is it does writing it, like at times I want to do something, I'll write it and I put it on my dresser so that every day I wake up,
Yeah.
I affirm it.
Yeah. That's really what program. I hate to say it, but we are like programs. Our brains are, so, in the psychology of things, like repetitive thoughts create, you can switch it though. So by repeating, that's why affirmations work. You're repeating it. You're attaching emotion to it, visualize yourself there. I always love to do 5 years from now, and I help solve problems today, because I go, what would Jessica 5 years from now say about this situation? And it might be like, I would tell myself to get out my feelings and keep going, So those kind of, and affirmations really work, because again, we're dealing with, especially with our people, reversing the psychology about us not being worthy, about us not being able to, about us not having, and which stops us or limits us from how far we go. We're going to have to do some work to redirect that and shift that, and then you'll find that things change, just because your thought about it changed, and about who you are and what you deserve change. And then there's some other things that interfere with how we interact with each other, and why our communities may not be as thriving as it should be. So that's also, you have to be very diligent about that. So we were talking about the beauty supply, like I would drive across town to go to the one Black-owned beauty supply I knew, and pay the extra $3 because I made my mindset about supporting my community. And the quote unquote sacrifice of my extra $3 was worth it for me to pay extra $3, because I saw the bigger picture. So, and then also how we treat each other as Black people boils down to how we feel about ourselves too. Yeah. So that's why Black on Black, quote unquote, Black on Black violence is so prevalent in communities that have higher levels of, people are more depressed and feel, economically more depressed, because that is just a reflection of how they feel about themselves. So when we start shifting how we feel about ourselves, we're going to be treating people nicer. We're going to have more empathy, more understanding. Yeah, that Black-owned business is not going to maybe have everything together, because I'm more understanding that they may have to use a register that's a little dated because that's what they can afford. Or they may have to, I don't know, that family has some family issues. So maybe the way that they interact socially might be a little bit, we can call each other on stuff, but doesn't mean we just give up. I'm never going to support another Black person. I don't want to work with a Black person. It's really about, actually it boils down to ourselves. And a lot of Black people don't want to hear that. Because if you really truly care about yourself and you care about your community, you understand that the community is coming in to business with these factors in place that may have it look a certain way. So you'll be a little more understanding. You'll be a little more cooperative with working with that business, because the collective power it has to support us.
Cassandra,
I have a question for Joyce.
Todd, Cassandra would like to chime in. The topic. Cassandra?
Yeah. Your mentorship, real quick. You said something about a mentor, like you follow her, or like she's on.
Oh, me.
Can you write it in the chat?
Well, I invest in business programs because once I started to believe in myself and my business, I started paying money for programs, the business courses that would help me. So this is a woman that has a business course. So she may not be accessible. I can put her name down, that she might do some free webinars and stuff. But once you start to really take what you want to do seriously, you'll make investments and you'll make risks, and you'll say, paying for $1,500 for me to get in her program is an investment. And so with that came the group mentorship and the access to the groups and all these things. So
When they see you investing in yourself, then
yes.
sometimes they will invest in you too.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to kind of jump in just very quickly on what Jessica was saying. One of the things that I do is that I keep a gratitude journal. And that is a way to really celebrate small victories, however small, but I never put anything in it that's negative. It's only positive. And that's how you kind of shift that mindset, because you're positively reinforcing what you view about yourself and what you view about the world.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
That's all I wanted to chime in about.
And I'm glad y'all brought this up, because this segues into the question that I have for Joy. As we talk about investing in ourselves and we talk about investing in our businesses, I also want to talk about investing in our personal persons, because last conversation, Joy didn't really get to go into depth, but we wanted to have a conversation also about insurance, about life insurance, health insurance, because I think that's also very powerful, because sure enough, as we start a business and own a business, many of us don't have our affairs in order. So God forbid, if something happens to us, what happens to our business? What happens to the money in our business? And I would like Joy to speak about the importance of insurance and the different types of insurance that are out there to not only protect our investments, but protect ourselves, that, in the event something does happen to us, what happens to the money in our business and what happens to our business, as well as how do we finance our homegoing services. So could you speak to that, Joy?
Right, sure. First and foremost, the purpose of any type of insurance is risk protection. So it's put in place to basically protect you from or help you recover from any type of disaster or a specific type of disaster. Life insurance is to help recover or replace money, dollars, income in the event of death. Disability insurance is there specifically to replace income so that you can continue to take care of whatever your life needs are, business needs are, in the event of a disability that prevents you from being able to continue to work for a period of time or for the rest of your life. So those are the two most well-known types of insurance. And you have things like liability insurance to cover your business in the event you get sued or there's some type of a legal issue that occurs where you now may have to pay money. The liability insurance can pay that out. So, the different types of insurance are all about leveraging so that you don't have to come out of your pocket, and which might be disastrous, and put your business to an end, lose your house, end up divorced because you can't take care of your family or your wife, but or spouse. But basically, what insurance is a stop measure to prevent a further disaster from occurring by leveraging, let's say, a premium of disability insurance might be $100 a month. You're leveraging and buying disability insurance to pay you out a $70,000 annual income in the event that you become disabled and you can no longer work to earn your income. So now, is there a specific insurance or an example you have, Tad, that you want me to talk about?
Well, Pam brought up the topic of insurance, which I thought was prevalent to the conversation, because many people believe that you'll just start a business but don't think about insuring your business. Like for me, Better Days Ahead Fitness, as a personal trainer, I have to have insurance also, and that's just as a personal trainer, not even talking about the business, in the event, in the process that my business turns to brick and mortar,
Mhm.
So I think insurance is something that we can't negate as we talk about wealth building and starting businesses and things like that. And since you're insurance professional as well, I thought it would definitely be valuable for you to speak to that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Or is there something you wanted to add on to that?
No, no, if you had a specific example, then I can expand, but just a broad sense of what the purpose of insurance is. It's for risk protection. That's the primary purpose before and there's secondary or supplemental purposes, but first and foremost, it's there for risk protection.
Right. Okay.
This is like, what type of insurance, like, do you, like, okay, yeah, there's insurance, but are there different types for your business? Like the financial, or like, I don't know. I know there's like, if you injure yourself, yeah, there's insurance for that. But like, what about like, even just in case you're losing money?
Disability for your income.
Oh, disability for your income?
Yes, in case
Yeah.
something happens and you're no longer able to work, you might want
Right.
to insure.
Right. There are
So
different
for
types of disability insurance. Let's say you're a business owner. You can have disability insurance at different levels, maybe specifically for you as that business owner, and you become disabled, and basically now you're covering whatever the income is, but it can really break down to um, overhead insurance. Okay. So let's say you want protection as a business owner in the event that you are become disabled, you are that primary person that runs the business, and now you can't do that. You get overhead insurance, disability insurance. It covers all your overhead, covers all your business expenses. Specifically, that's what it's there for. So you may say when you get overhead disability insurance, this is what it costs for me to run my business on a monthly basis. And that's what you're covering with that overhead insurance. And that's what it'll pay out each month. So to keep your lights on, to pay your employees, to, pay, what most of the things that it takes to cover your business. So you can get very specific with the type of disability you have. You can have key man disability insurance, which is basically, okay, let's say one of my key employees becomes disabled and they're no longer able to work. I need to replace them. I need key man insurance to help maybe cover what's being lost now that they're not here, and their work covers 50% of what I generate in income. That key man insurance was basically there to cover that amount of what they may be worth for what they generate, and also to give you that time to get someone else on board and hire them, during the time they're gone, because it's not going to be immediate that you can find someone to replace them. It might take months. So now this key man is gone. It triggers that key man disability, and it's paying out, a percentage of what they generally generate until you can get someone back in. So it can get very specific in what's out there for disability, which a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people instantly think AFLAC when you talk about disability insurance. And there are two major differences between true disability and AFLAC. AFLAC it's great too, but you have to understand what they do. AFLAC has many different things it does. It's the form of AFLAC disability. It only pays for 2 years. And if you're permanently disabled, that's it. After 2 years, you don't get anything else. Then there's a cancer AFLAC policy. There's a hospitalization AFLAC policy. So you have that, pay attention and have a good understanding of what your need is, because you'll end up buying all these little policies when you might not need them via that brand of AFLAC.
So I have a question. The question is, are there financial resources or incentives for small business startup that minorities can tap into? And also, is there a benefit to registering as a minority-owned business?
So, if you're gonna have, depending on what your business is, so sometimes you won't get money directly from the government because you're minority owned, but contractors that are large enough to get those contracts have to hire a certain number of minorities. a certain
Mhm.
percentage. And so if you have that, if you are part of that industry, then yes, it definitely benefits you to register. Because even if you are Black and you own a business, if you're not registered, that company that needs to show that they have minority owned businesses helping them or subcontracting with them will not hire you because they won't get the benefit that comes with you being a minority owned business. So, yes, if you um, fit into those criteria, then yes. There's certain um, businesses, though, that are exempt. So, I didn't register as a minority owned business or a woman owned business because attorneys are exempt. They, when they're hiring, they don't have to hire a minority owned attorney. Even if they don't have to have one on their team. They're exempt from it. So it's not going to give me a benefit. Um, so, when I started doing coaching and helping businesses, I did go register. I registered my coaching business because there are a lot of business opportunities where they do hire, and if they can find a certified minority business owner, it would help. So it depends on what your business is, whether or not you're going to be able to benefit from it. So again, you would do some research to make sure you can benefit from it. And if you can, then yes, register for it. There are a lot of there are new monies coming out to help specifically Black owned businesses that are non traditional because of Black Lives Matter and the pandemic. There's a lot of stuff like American Express, Discover Card, PayPal, um, that are now teaming up with other organizations to actually give money and grants to minority owned businesses specifically without some of the hoops you traditionally have to jump through. And some of them are loans and some of them are grants. There's also traditionally money available um, where if you are working with um, minorities or in um, key areas that they might call a hub spot or things like that, where or an empowerment zone or wherever where they have these different grants that are tied into you hiring people from a specific location or poverty level index or whatever that you can get involved with that can help you. So there is money out there. There is a lot of money out there, and some of which does not require you to build a really good credit score or have money or collateral that you can show. There's also ways to, if you get a corporation or an LLC and actually start with a real business structure, um, where you can build a Dun and Bradstreet number and start to build a credit profile for your business, which won't get you personal credit at all. But if you get to the point where your business has a good credit history and a good credit score, you can do things and get money because of that business credit score, where the money is then piled into your business because you've shown a history. And so, but you need to make sure you can pay the bills, whether you're paying it from your pocket or your business, before you open a Dun and Bradstreet, because what they're looking at is how you manage that, how you handle your money, and that you pay your bills. That's how you get that score. And I know Cassandra can talk more about that. So I'm going to shut up now.
Yeah, but Pam, before you go, is there a way you can put those resources on the chat
In the chat.
so that people can, like, where they can find startup money for businesses?
I can put some of them. I don't know all of the name. I don't have all the
Yeah,
names
just the
right.
Yeah,
ones you
so the
know.
ones you know that
Yeah.
would help a little.
Yes.
Cassandra, you want to chime in?
Yeah, so
Product arena.
yeah, so when you talk about the Dun and Bradstreet, the paydex score, just to Pam's point, it's not just paying your bills, it's paying your bills on time,
Mm.
because it's, it's almost like your personal credit score. When you don't pay your bills on time, it's a ding. So, you know, any company that invests in you, and I don't want to say bank because it's not you sometimes it's not even a traditional bank, but even if there's a company that invests in you, they use your DMV score. They're checking to make sure that they're going to get their money back and they're going to get their money back in a timely manner. So, and one of the other resources, I kind of touched on it, but it's called Community Development Financial Institutions. Um, they have a website. I don't remember what the website is, but they have by state. If you click on the state, you can kind of find different resources there. When you talk about registering as a minority or woman-owned business, you know, the federal government, you know, they issue, to Pam's point, they issue those contracts. And I don't recall the timing, but the General Services Administration, where a lot of companies register, they have to, you know, they have to register in order to do business with government agencies, federal government agencies. So if you can kind of maybe go to that website, maybe you can probably check to see what companies are out there that need to make sure that they have those types of relationships.
Oh, wow. Okay. Please write that in the chat, just like the name.
Oh, okay.
Because I know there's people like after they do ask us for like, oh, one of the speakers mentioned this, so we just want to have it set for them on that. So thank you so much.
What I'm putting in here is going to be very general, but I will definitely get a detailed thing to you guys that you can share with your people, okay?
Thank you.
Joy, this question is to you as an investment advisor and educator. We know not everyone can go into business. Not everyone is carved out for business. Therefore, what savings plan and investment option would work best? Would you encourage people to tap into in building investment outside business?
Well, that's a little difficult to say because you don't want them taking away from something that would affect their ability to pay their basic bills or their, you know, be able to continue with whatever's needed for living. I know a lot of people will resort to using their credit cards, but once again, that's if you have enough credit on your credit cards. And if you do that, you're going to end up with paying some sizable interest, okay? And if you don't have the money to begin with to start that business and you're making huge amounts.
No, I think you misunderstood me.
Oh,
I'm talking about working people who are not business oriented, not interested in doing business, but would like to know how best to save their money through.
Oh, so how to save and invest.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I say investment portfolios where they can invest their money in stocks and all that to yield them.
Gotcha.
That's rather than putting it in the bank and it's getting nothing back.
All righty. Well, basically, if you are starting to invest or thinking about starting to invest, it's kind of along that you have to look to use money that you don't need immediately. If you're planning to invest, and before I tell you like the basic starting way, you need to expect that money is going to be out of circulation or need to be out of circulation for at least minimum 1 year. And that's the absolute minimum, about 2 years, okay? Because you need time for recovery in the event that there's a downturn in the market. And it doesn't always happen as immediately as it's been happening now. So with that being said, other than you know, starting in a bank account, it would be great if you start with your savings first and you have your savings. You have a goal that you're saving, that you're investing for. You're not investing just to invest. There needs to be a goal because you need to know when you're going to exit from that investment, selling or liquidating, or what the end game is with it. The easiest and simplest way to get started is through mutual funds by a means of something called dollar cost averaging. You can open up a mutual fund account with something as little as $100. and have it set where you might invest $50 a month from there and have it automatically coming out of your savings account or checking account. And that's all it takes to start. Now, the
Can you say
difficult
the name
part
of it
is
again? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
a mutual fund.
You said through,
Through a process called dollar cost averaging.
Which you'll write down after, right? In the chat.
I sure will.
Thank you.
And dollar cost averaging is just basically investing an amount of money on a periodic basis, whether it's $50 a month, 100 or more. You have that, buy as much of that mutual fund. It can be each month, each week, every quarter as possible. And basically this is something that you can generally only do with mutual funds, where let's say that mutual fund might be worth $25 a share, or let's say it's worth $100 a share, but you're investing on a regular basis, $50 a share. That $50 will buy as much of that mutual fund as possible. So until you actually buy a whole share. And what a mutual fund is for, most people, let's say you have a box, and this box is a box that holds tech stocks. Okay. So in that tech stock box, or that tech stock mutual fund, go all of the individual tech stocks or tech companies. So what a mutual fund is it has within it 100 different companies, 50 different companies of a specific type. So if you want to get into tech stocks, I don't have $3,500 to buy a share of Amazon, but I want to buy it. Okay, well, you know what? This tech stock also includes Amazon, and the cost of this tech stock is $100 a share. So you'll have a little piece of Amazon. And as you continue, you'll have a little piece of Amazon, you'll have a little piece of Google, you may have a little piece of Tesla, but you'll be invested in, 150 or more different tech stocks instead of just one, or instead of a piece of just one, or in this case, none, because you can't buy a piece of a stock. So it allows you to get in the investment game, to invest in companies you might not be able to afford to invest in if you bought it one stock at a time, and to continue to build it up at a level that you can afford. So, but you have to understand, be willing to take on that risk, because you need to also understand it's fully exposed to the market. So when the market's going up and down, that investment will too. But in the case of a mutual fund, since it's invested in so many different companies, let's say Amazon went down $500 that day, and you have built your mutual fund up to $2,000, that mutual fund is not going to drop by $2,000, because by $500, because all of the other companies in there would all have to drop at the same time at the same rate. So it kind of minimizes, or it kind of evens out a little bit, that the level of volatility won't be as extreme with the mutual fund as it will with, an individual company. So it's a good way to get started.
Okay. You talked about mutual, is there like a cushion that they give on mutual, like your percentage can never fall below this? Or
unfortunately not.
Exposed to risk.
You can adjust the amount of risk you take on with a mutual fund by the type of mutual fund. Maybe you'll get a bond mutual fund. So that's not in the stock market, but it's the bond market. There's some risk in a bond market, but it's at a different level and not as volatile as the stock market. Now, there are other vehicles that allow you to have a cushion, like annuities. They're variable annuities, which allow you to invest in the market, but that annuity contains a list or a choice of selection of the sub-accounts or mutual funds and annuity that you can invest for. You can't just go and say, I want to have this one in the annuity. And it may also give you the protection for, an additional fee that will give you a guaranteed 5% or 6%, or the performance of, this annuity, the mutual funds in this annuity, whichever is higher. So, but also keep in mind, in order for the company to take that risk on with an annuity, they're going to charge you an extra fee to do that. So it all depends on what your goal is, and what your needs are. That's why it's important for you to identify it. And traditionally, annuities are, the purpose of an annuity is to generate retirement income. So that's what traditionally annuities are used for. They're used for other things, of course, but the main purpose of that annuity is to generate income at a later time.
Okay, is there a penalty to cashing out on your mutual?
There's no penalty to cash out on a mutual fund, other than you might cash out when the market's down and lock in your loss, so there's no penalty. And then it also depends. You can have mutual funds in retirement accounts, like an IRA or a Roth IRA, or you can have them outside of the retirement account. So there's different treatment to the mutual funds depending on what type of an account they're in.
I know that we're supposed to close by 5, but if you guys want, because we have so many things to cover that we haven't even gotten to the meat of it, would you guys consider continuing the talk? And those who want to stay can stay, or do we conclude? Because it is after 5.
I can give a little bit more time, but I can't give much more time. I have to get my daughter.
Oh boy, so much to cover. Okay, let me go straight to this question.
We have to do a part 3. Do a
I'm going to
part
skip
3.
some. What?
Yeah.
I'm looking for the chat screen.
She said do a part 3.
Yeah, we have a part 3. Okay. Cromwell, I told you we should make this 3 hours. See? Anyway.
Yeah.
I guess because we barely scratched the surface. Barely. But okay, I guess we do part 3 and then we might end up with a part 4, because we do really need to give people to make this workshop meaningful.
But it could be on a regular basis. It could be a series.
Yes, it is real serious, and our youth need to get this, even some of our adults, so that we can teach our children earlier on how to invest, how to save, and some of the things, like we haven't even gotten to insurance, because our community.
Well, maybe we should just have a series, and each section should be specific topic, right? So we're not, it's not too wide, and then the next one will be another topic.
Right. And it could be ongoing.
Yeah. What had happened that we had to go back in history was last time we were supposed to deal with the history, but we didn't in depth. So I wanted us to touch, because in order for us, at any time, you have to go back into history in order to move, forward.
Move forward,
into the present. And that's what I had wanted us to accomplish, for us to understand a little bit of our economic history. Having said this, I am thankful to you, my panelists. You are so awesome. And to all those who were able to log in, I hope you will all come back. If you all don't mind, could you put your emails for us? I don't know how I don't know how this Zoom thing, I'm still a novice on it. And I don't want
I'm not Zoom savvy. I'm not Zoom savvy. I'm trying to get to the chat as you speak.
Okay, the chat, it should be on the bottom middle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess we have to continue on the next, on the part 3. So much we have to talk about, so much questions I have and Cromwell have that we have not even touched.
I have a quick question for Joy, really quick, sorry. It's just about the insurance, like for startup businesses, should they focus on insurance? Like, should they worry about that or not? Like, not yet, until like your business is secured, then you worry about the insurance, or
Don't worry about it.
Well, I think at the least you should, I mean, depending on your business, there may be specific insurance requirements. So at a minimum, you should make sure you're addressing those requirements.
so in the business plan, we should like when for those who are interested in
So-
creating business plan, do you put the insurance, like the insurance things in the business plan as well, or?
Well, I'm not the business plan specialist, but I do have a business plan and I don't have that insurance listed in my business plan. So,
Okay.
Yeah, you
so-
don't need to put your insurance in your business plan, but I would say as soon as you can afford liability and hazard insurance,
yes.
you should have it. Because if there's any problems and you're just starting out and you don't have that insurance, there's a good chance if anything happens, your business is wiped out before you get it off the ground.
Most definitely.
And a quick one more question. Sorry. For like those who have internet business, like whose business online, like is insurance, like the insurance rate, is it really high for them? Like when I mean high, I mean like how, like I know like people who have their own stores and stuff, they need insurance. Like I can see that, but if your
Okay.
business is online, like what would you really need
So
insurance?
here's what I would say to you. If you're online, you still want to have insurance. You're probably running it out of your house, though it's online. And so you can possibly, and Joy could tell you this, get an endorsement on your homeowner's policy for the business, but you want to make sure your equipment is covered and all of that because you're running your business out of your home. And if anything happens and your computers are destroyed or all of the stuff you're running your business out of, you're lost. The other thing is the liability, the hazard insurance covers you for loss. So
Mm-hmm.
if you have some kind of hazard where your stuff is destroyed and you can't make money, it's going to cover that income you're losing while you're trying to get your equipment back and get back online and all of that. So even if you're just online, if you're building a real business and not trying to make money online, you need to treat it like a business
Okay.
and run it like a business.
And can I just add also, I think people think because you're online that it's not a whole lot of risk associated with it. But when you are doing business online, you're exchanging information about people, personal information that you
Mm-hmm.
need to make sure it stays protected from a cybersecurity perspective. Because if you have a breach, let's say somebody's using your Wi-Fi at home and they somehow hack into your computer or your desktop or whatever, that you've now exposed people's personal information for which they have trusted you to safeguard. So because you're online doesn't mean there isn't risk associated with it.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
And
Thank
there's
you.
and
Thank
there's real
you all.
expenses.
What'd you say?
And there's real expenses that got to get covered. Online is a business.
Yeah, online is definitely a business.
Thank you guys. Appreciate you for being here with us. And I hope you all come back on
Yes.
our 3 series on this important topic as we empower and encourage ourselves to, form, to build ourselves and our community. Thank you. And God
But
bless.
before our panelists go, Jane, let them give out their contact information or anything that they may have come.
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Pam, do you want to promote your Build the Biz coaching program?
I have it's a free Facebook group called Build the Biz Insiders that I start working with people because I know some people can't afford to just like jump in online. And from there, you can come into my coaching programs and whatever, but you'll get stuff for free. And right now, we're doing a gratitude challenge. So I love that Cassandra had her everyday gratitude journal because gratitude attracts abundance. It helps you begin to see the opportunities in front of you when you start to be grateful and being able to have conversations with yourself that are positive that lets you see that because those conversations we have in our head, that's the most important conversations. Those make you or break you. And finding a way to see gratitude every single day helps you begin to have the right conversations. It helps you start to see the abundance in and around you. And so I would invite everybody to come there. It's Facebook groups and it's Build a Biz Insiders. I'm putting it in the chat. And I would love to see some of you there.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Cassandra, is there anything you would like to promote? Anything? She said no, no. See
Nope.
us at part 3.
I am your tried and true, corporate, exec, and I love what I do. And I mentor. I'm a big brother, big sister. So if no one's a big brother or big sister, I encourage you to do so.
Thank
Very
you. Thank
important. We need that.
Go,
Our youth
go,
need that.
Cassandra.
I'm sorry.
I said, go, Cassandra. And
Yeah.
she has been a big sister for quite a while.
7 years and counting. She's 14.
That's right.
you.
And her little sister is flourishing.
Yeah. Yes.
So
We need to be our brother's keeper.
Yeah.
that's right.
Absolutely.
Important. That's the only way we can grow and grow
Yeah.
stronger.
Absolutely.
So, Joy, is there anything you want to promote?
Not at this
Well,
time, but I will be starting up my financial literacy courses next year. So
Beautiful. We need that.
people will
Yeah.
just starting from the basics, because everyone needs to get started, and there are opportunities coming our way, and I hate to see people missing out on, and they've already started, but there's been fear with the markets and what's going on, and a lot of people don't realize they've missed the upturn. I mean, that's been going on. So get in there with your mutual funds. Put that $100 in and put 25 a month in.
You.
I'm gonna reach out to you, Joy. That's very helpful.
Yes.
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 Definitely.
I missed
because
out. I'm not gonna
it's
lie.
taken off, and we don't want to be left behind once again. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And Jessica.
Yes. So I said woman of many hats, but in addition to being a social worker, I have a natural hair business. But my general email is Marshall_Jessica@hotmail.com, and my website for the beauty hair care is naturallybeautifulhaircare.com. But what one of the things I'm excited to be doing with the hair business is helping other women create or enhance their own businesses with specific skills, creating. I get a lot of questions like your daughter asked about my hair. And so I have an online school that has helped. I have over 30 national, international students. I have students in Ghana and Texas, and these women have opened up their salons. Many of them are moms, single moms. They're all women of color. And I think everyone has made back their investment multiple times over. So they're like earning additional income, starting their business even during COVID in the beauty industry. And so I do a free webinar. I'll put the link in here, but it's
Please do.
freemicrolactraining.com/webinar. And it's a 90-minute presentation, and it just it shows what's in it, what I teach, how I as a social worker even created that. And I'll put that in the chat. But naturallybeautifulhaircare.com is the main site. You can go on there and connect to social media, Instagram page, my Facebook page, and get training at the top. Will connect you to the training page. Find out about how to create your business in that niche hair care industry.
Nice.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For those who may want to follow me, I'm Coach Tad Cromwell. I have a Facebook page called Better Days Ahead Fitness, where every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we do free workouts from 7 p.m. to 7:30. We teach the basics, so you can stop on by. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we do a Facebook Live. It's called Better Days Ahead Fitness. And you can also follow videos from previous workouts, all right? It's a lot of tutorials and then some workout programs to give you the basic human movement system, put you on a fast track to building strength and losing weight. All right? I just had to put that in there.
My name is Jane Duru, and I'm the founder of PRNTCF, which is a foundation I started to honor my dad. And our business is to empower and inspire the seeds of humanity. And you guys follow us and keep supporting us and helping us to build a better future for our youth. Thank you.
Thank you.
God
Thank
bless
you. Have a good one.
Bye.
All right. Yeah.
Thank
Everybody
you.
take care.
All right.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right.